Welcome to the Into the Planet podcast. I'm Jill Heinerth, and this is Robert McClellan.
Hey, everybody.
And we're doing it on YouTube, so you can actually see us rather than just listening to us.
Yeah, this is kind of scary. I'm used to hiding behind a mixing board and headphones and a big microphone in front of my face.
That's okay.
Yeah, you're the one who's very accustomed to being on camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's the middle of August. It's hot.
Yeah.
It's hot everywhere. But I just got back from a cool trip to Alaska, and it was nice to spend a couple of weeks in a hot summer up there because it was hot there too.
Okay, so you went to Alaska, and just why?
Yeah, it was a bit of a different travel mode for me. Usually I'm on expedition ships or I'm living in hardship in some tent, somewhere. But I was invited to be a speaker on the Cunard lines on the Queen Elizabeth, which is an incredibly opulent, beautifully appointed ship. And they asked me to come along on a cruise from Vancouver to the Hubbard Glacier in Alaska and asked me to share some of my experiences as an explorer and some of my lessons about climate change with the guests.
Yeah, so this doesn't count as an expedition. I'm sorry.
No, it doesn't.
No.
But it was pretty amazing, to be 10 days in such a cruising through this incredibly beautiful environment. Like I said, I'm not accustomed to that kind of luxury.
Oh, I know.
I got to be honest. I was afraid I'd be bored.
Yeah, I know.
That sounds like really arrogant.
It's just not our style.
Well, I learned that it actually is.
It is?
Yeah.
As I get older, it's definitely going to be my style.
No, it's not the way I normally travel for expedition travel, but it was great.
Yeah,
The ship was luxurious. It was unbelievably clean. The service was amazing. The food was off the charts. We made several stops where I got off and I got my energy to go for a nice hike and explore. And on board, there's endless activities. There's sports, there's lectures, there's
it's a town.
Sightseeing.
It's a floating town. There's more people on that ship than live in our town.
No, there aren't.
Just about.
No, there's only 2,000 people on the Queen Elizabeth. Some
Only.
Some ships do have 10,000 people on them.
It's a floating hotel.
Yeah, but I didn't expect to like it so much. It was fantastic. I had a great experience, and I got some incredible photography of wildlife and ice, and I wanted to see the state of the ice, the state of the glaciers, and it's been a couple years since I've been in the Arctic because of COVID, so I was kind of curious what things would look like in Glacier Bay National Park.
Right. So you saw these. This was sort of the point of the entire trip, wasn't it? This is sort of the ship goes along the coast and then goes up into the fjords, and you get a chance to actually witness what's happening. So what's happening? Yeah.
So we went up through the Inside Passage, and then really beelined it for the Hubbard Glacier to have a look at that. But we stopped at Skagway. We stopped in Sitka. So we had a few stops, which was great. But seeing the ice was a little shocking to me. Glacier Bay National Park, the glaciers are kind of sad. They've retreated so much in climate change that it's now not all the glaciers in Glacier Bay are retreating. Some of them are actually still growing, which is interesting. But in general, comparing photographs of the past or even the ice extent of the past compared to where it is today is fairly shocking. Yeah. Now, if you were a first-time visitor to the area, you'd just be gobsmacked with the beauty, with how interesting the glaciers look and how, mammoth they are. But if you've made multiple trips to the north or spent time in the polar regions, you get a sense for the change.
So this was basically firsthand witnessing climate change.
Yeah, really it was. And it's also interesting to see, the animal life, the wildlife, how is that adapting? There are, some species that are in decline or they're moving. There's other species moving in and increasing in numbers. And it's very, very complicated because, we have certain protection regulations in places in different areas. And so it could take a long time to figure out, like, what are the drivers of change so that you can definitively say, well, this is causing that, and so on and so on. But in Glacier Bay, there's such a long human history that the stories have been passed down generation to generation, and the indigenous people that lived there long before settlers actually have a great story about how they had to suddenly leave the area as things changed extremely rapidly, and they had to move. And when they returned, their bay was not the same.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is sort of a full circle. Early in your career, you were involved in a project that went to Antarctica. And you actually, it's the famous Jill diving into an iceberg on the, was that the Ross Ice Shelf?
Yeah.
Okay, so early in, a few decades ago, you were sort of a canary in a coal mine telling people that, hey, the ice is melting, it's calving from Antarctica. And, you sort of were raising red flags then.
Yeah.
So here we are a few decades later, now not exactly the same ice, you're in the north now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once again, full circle, we've,
Yeah.
I don't understand how people can deny climate change, and you can go on a beautiful luxury cruise and witness it for yourself.
Yes, you can, but it is complicated. So, and I never want to treat people like their questions are dumb or uninformed or whatever. It's a very complicated situation. Like I recall, back when I was down in Antarctica and trying to get to the B-15 iceberg, we had an extremely heavy sea ice year. And so people were saying, oh, yay, that's great, lots of sea ice. And it's like, well, not necessarily, because a lot of that sea ice was actually not originally sea ice. It was part of the ice sheet that was collapsing. It was just in the ocean floating.
A slushy, a giant slushy.
It doesn't make it the sea ice.
Yeah.
Sea ice is frozen ocean.
Well, let me clarify. When I say people,
Yeah.
I don't mean just your average person. I mean politicians and others who have an agenda.
Yeah, but a lot of people just really, truly don't understand.
Yeah.
People say sea level rise. It's like, ooh, I don't get it. We've got all the water we're ever going to have on this planet, right? And it's like, yeah, but little things like thermal expansion mean that we're going to have bigger waves and higher seas as the planet warms.
Well, we've just had the warmest July in history, at least in the northern hemisphere.
Yeah, in the world.
In the world. I mean, in places like Phoenix, Arizona, it was 110 degrees for 30-some days straight.
Yeah.
How do people live like that? I mean, I just don't get it. It's like humans are not supposed to live in a desert.
Well, and that's the reckoning that we've come to. Like, we are at that point where there are sections of the United States even that will not be habitable.
Yeah.
I mean, you think, oh, well, gosh, I live in Florida, I'll just go for a swim. Well, it's not going to cool you off when the water's 104.
Or the water is so full of various bacterias and algae and so forth.
Cyanobacteria.
That it's actually dangerous to swim.
Yeah. Brain-eating amoebas.
I know.
I don't want to scare.
I don't even want to go in the bathtub anymore.
I don't want to scare everybody.
Let's scare them. They need to be scared.
No, I know. It's a mixed thing. Like I don't want people to
become despair.
Despondent.
Okay. No.
Like I want everyone always to believe that the little things and choices they make will make a difference. But I am worried about, the temperature of the oceans. I mean, I saw some photographs that Stephen Frink took. He's a professional photographer and editor of Alert Diver magazine, and he's been living in the Keys, photographing the Keys for his whole life. And he did some photography just a few weeks apart, like before the big heat wave and now, and it looks like some very bad coral bleaching. Now, coral bleaching, just for those that don't know what that is, it's the water gets so warm that that the polyps are actually ejected from the coral head, and then it looks like it's bleach white for a while. Let me finish this.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
So it looks bleached white right now because
Right.
the animals were just ejected from the skeleton, basically.
Right.
But what happens now in the heat is that filamentous algae goes crazy, and those are all going to look like brown, fuzzy masses
Right.
pretty soon.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you answered the question. Go ahead.
Yeah.
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 I was just going to say that go to like a Sesame Street, explain it like I'm 5 years old, and you did.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
basically our relationship. You come home with all these incredible, high-end scientific, theories and facts, and I'm
And
like,
then I have to explain
and then
it.
you have to explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
Well,
This makes you a much better public speaker.
Well, what was interesting is when I was a little kid, I think my dad brought me back a piece of coral from a vacation. Like, thank goodness that's kind of like
Yeah.
going away. But it was this hard, stony
Yeah.
rock,
Right.
with symmetrical patterns in it. And I just thought, wow, that's so cool. It's a rock. I
Yeah.
was a rock collector,
Mm-hmm.
but coral is alive. Coral is an animal
Right,
colony,
right.
and in each one of those little symmetrical holes,
Right.
there's supposed to be a living, filter-feeding
Right.
being in there.
Right.
And so when I got a piece of dead coral as a kid and got all excited, that's
Yeah.
what the coral would look like at the moment that
Right.
all the polyps were
Yeah.
ejected.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So you got those were the days when your parents went to Florida and brought you back a baby alligator and a piece of coral,
Or conch shell.
a conch shell.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we had a baby alligator, but it wasn't alive. It had been stuffed.
Ew,
Yeah,
really?
yeah. It was a big ugly brown thing. Yeah.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
that's awful.
my aunt and uncle moved to Florida, and they brought us back sacks of oranges and this little baby alligator that lived up on a shelf in our house.
Ew.
I used to go up and touch the teeth.
That's gross.
Well, then later in life, I would be in rivers in North Florida swimming with real live, full-grown alligators,
Yeah.
and so it was a
boy.
very interesting
Boy,
evolution.
we've lived in an interesting generation,
Yeah, we
haven't
have.
we?
Yeah, we have.
Honestly, like my dad did once bring me back a big, huge conch shell, beautiful pink
Yeah.
inside
Oh,
and
yeah,
everything.
yeah, sure.
And I remember thinking how beautiful that was. And again, I
Yeah.
did not,
Yeah.
as a child, connect that
Right,
to being a
right.
home that an animal lived
Well,
in.
because
And
it was on a shelf in a Florida gift shop.
I know,
He didn't
I
remove it from the
know.
environment.
But isn't that like such an interesting metaphor? Like we are so detached
Yeah.
from the natural world that's why we struggle to understand climate change. It's why we struggle to understand what's
correct.
happening to the oceans
Right.
that we cannot see beneath unless we're scuba divers.
That's right. Yeah.
Like we have a failure of the imagination,
Mm-hmm.
and we just too frequently go, oh wow, cool, and accept this little, seashell without making the connection
Right.
that
Well,
that's an animal home.
People don't know where their food and water come from.
No, I know.
And
I
we
know.
we learned that when we did our We Are Water project.
I remember being in a
Yeah.
class of grade 9 environmental science students, and they had just learned that bacon came from a pig.
And baking, yeah, it didn't just show up automatically on
this was
a
in
shelf in a freezer.
A rural farming community, and I'm kind of
yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah,
ouch, I have a lot of
yeah.
work to do.
But on the other hand, I remember when you were in Newfoundland giving a presentation to school children, and you asked the children if they knew where their water came from, and the children knew was it
The Babel's Reservoir.
Babel's Reservoir?
They knew
Yeah,
exactly where it came
and
from.
they knew that the water came from the
Yeah.
rain and from the streams, and
Yeah.
of course they live on an island, so
Yeah.
they're very familiar with water, and
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
So
so,
let's go-
important to meet people
Yeah.
where they're at and their knowledge.
Yeah.
Like,
So I was going to say, let's
Yeah.
let's turn this to a positive.
yeah.
So you're speaking to young people specifically, right? So what do you want to say to young people? What would you tell them that they can do? Because we
Yeah.
boomers, well, speaking for myself, us boomers, we pretty much blew it.
Yeah, I guess I should be saying we're deeply sorry for leaving you with this planet in
Well,
such a shambles.
But
But
you're not a boomer. You're not quite a boomer.
no,
Yeah. Yeah.
boy, am I a month of being a boomer. But I would say to kids, don't lose hope.
Yeah.
We have some pretty serious problems ahead, and I have to be honest that they will not live in the level of comfort and luxury and
prosperity.
contentment, security that we have lived in.
Right.
But I don't want them to give up. I don't want
Right.
them to be despondent. I want
Yeah.
them to understand that the only way out of this is through collective human action, and so we need to get along. We need to love one another.
Well, yeah,
we
well,
need to work together to come up with some global solutions for some pretty serious issues.
Yeah, and I have a lot of faith in the younger people. I really do. I mean,
Yeah.
just look around, and I don't mean just Greta Thunberg and the people that are at the tip of the spear in the environmental and environment movement, conservation movement, but just the kids that we meet. Our friends' children, teenagers, grade school kids. They're all far more in touch with the world around them, and trying to figure it out and trying to make it a better place in every way, not just environmentally, but in basically in their humanity, their empathy, their inclusion.
Yeah. Well, we have the tools, right? Like you and I grew up pre-internet, so connecting globally with people wasn't easy.
Yeah.
But today, a kid can reach out
That's
to
right.
anyone else in the world. They're probably already playing games with someone at some
Oh.
other corner of the world. And so
Yeah.
it's that connection, that
That's right.
interconnectivity, and the fact that they do have the world's knowledge at their fingertips. That does give me hope. As long as they are good critical thinkers,
Right.
and very careful about doing the research to check the quality of their news sources,
Oh yeah.
then I think we have the tools.
Yeah.
We're on the cusp of some major technological changes, but also we're on the cusp of an age of enlightenment.
Yeah, we just need to empower them and give them all of our knowledge and all of our encouragement.
Yeah.
And let them run with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't slam any doors. Open the
Okay.
doors and support. Thanks for joining us on the Into the Planet podcast, and I hope you've enjoyed this video version, because sometimes we're going to be giving you some video versions rather than just audio. And remember, you can always get more information at intotheplanet.com. This podcast is available on YouTube as well as podcast platforms everywhere. So remember, the most important thing that we want to leave you with is to love one another.
Take care. See you in the next one.